Cool. Well, thank you guys, Rob and Michael, for joining me. Can you say it? Can you pronounce it for me? I generally.
Wait, no, we want to know we want to know how you think it's pronounced.
Okay, yeah, that's Balmorhea. Balmorhea.
That's pretty close. That's pretty close.
Yeah.
So we pronounce it Balmorhea.
Okay. Yeah.
Balmorhea, yeah, and it's named after a small town in out in the desert in West Texas. So when we named the band, it's a place that people are pretty familiar with here in the state, and it didn't occur to us that it might cause trouble down the road with pronunciation. So you're definitely not the first to be confused at how it's pronounced, but yeah, Balmorhea is how we say it.
So, can you just, I guess, touch base of how you guys got together and formed the band initially? Like, where does the journey begin for you guys?
Well, before we started recording, we were talking about kind of where we grew up, and Rob moved to Austin in 2003, I had just moved there in 2003 as well. And we had met a couple of years before that working at a summer camp, and kind of realized that we had similar music interests and started hanging out a little bit more when we met in Austin. And then at some point, I don't really remember how, we started just playing. I would bring my guitar over, and Rob had a piano and a guitar, and we would just start playing. And he had some song ideas and I had some, and we kind of just mashed them together. And before we knew it, we're like, oh, we have enough songs. We should try to record these. So that was the kind of starting point for us. We never really had any plan or forethought, or we didn't have the thing set out before us. We were just kind of playing music and had some similar interests, and it kind of always has worked in that kind of organic way.
I feel like, Mike, when we first became friends back in that time, 2003, and we were talking about this recently, primarily what we did together was go see shows here in Austin. We would go see shows at this place called Emo's, which is like a famous club here in Austin that has since shut down. But we were reminiscing the other day about how many like amazing concerts we saw there, including like some bands that were influential to us, when we were first starting out. But yeah, I mean, I think it just started in the way that all bands start when you're really young. I mean, we just loved music. We loved going to see shows, and we kind of started putting our stuff together in like the smallest possible way, just the two of us, and then it slowly grew from there.
Now, did you guys have any technical or like classical training in music, or did you just kind of figure it out on your own?
I took guitar lessons. Now, I'd never learned how to read music, but I learned basic theory and scales and things like that, but nothing else besides that. And I think, Rob, you had more of a kind of more in-depth training, if you will, growing up, right?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, taking classical, like piano lessons, basically just like kind of your average American piano lesson. I started like when I was 7 years old and played classical music all the way up, I guess until today. So I had more of that training, although I was never a particularly good student in that realm. I wasn't particularly good at or interested in theory, and I think I had more of a musical ability than I did like a kind of technical ability, and I actually went to University of Texas here in Austin my freshman year for college, and I studied music. I was accepted into the music school, but decided that style was not for me. So I do have that background, although I don't have any kind of professional degree in music.
Now, I guess then, why not, like, what kind of led you to this kind of genre, or this like culmination of like, of genres, but like of just more instrumental comparatively to maybe lyrical? What really you kind of what led you that route, I guess?
I guess for me, in terms of, I primarily wrote on guitar. I never thought of my singing voice as all that great. I can't really project my voice that well naturally, just for whatever reason. And so I always kind of shied away from that. And I was just more interested in the actual music as a listener, but also when I started playing guitar and writing music on my own, I was always kind of just drawn to what the music could say alone without anything else. So
Mm.
it was never something I consciously sat down and thought of really. It was just like, that's just what I kind of, when I sat down to play guitar, there was never singing or words involved really.
Mm. Mm.
And I think a lot of the bands that we really were interested in when we were young were instrumental bands. I don't know, for whatever reason, that was the little scene of music that we thought was dynamic and cool. And I think that we were very interested in, like, you know, the spaces between genres. You know, obviously, like, post rock was a big kind of movement of music that was really kind of hot at that time, and so there was a lot of instrumental music being made, and I think there was a lot of innovation going on at that time in that area of music. And so I think for us, that's what we felt at that age, was like a dynamic place, and that's where we wanted to be, and that's where we felt like our overlap. That's kind of where, I don't know, it's almost like you don't really get to choose that. It's kind of just an innate interest, and I think that's where we found ourselves.
And a lot of the influences from like the late 90s into the early 2000s for us were like thrill jockey bands like the band Tortoise and their kind of various side projects. The group from Louisville, Kentucky called Rachel's, which was sort of like a post-rock chamber Baroque. Oh shoot. Sorry, someone's buzzing my door. I actually, can I step away for a second?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, sorry, keep going. I'll be right back.
Cool.
We're waiting on our physical LPs to be delivered from Germany.
Oh, cool.
And I think maybe today, I'm not sure if that's them, but so maybe that's the package that he's receiving right now.
Well, that'd
and it's
be cool
150,
timing.
So he has to, that it will be cool. Yeah, he can bring it on if that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, like he was just kind of talking about some of the bands that we were interested in at that time. And it's interesting because when you're young, I think you have often like a pretty kind of, unless you kind of grew up in a climate in which you're exposed to a ton of culture, which some people are. I grew up in a small town, so I kind of had like a pretty limited frame of view. So it's kind of cool to go back and like think about the bands that were very influential to us, and see now as I'm older and a lot more familiar with music in general, the way that those bands kind of fit into progressions and lineages of music, that you're not really aware of when you're 20 years old, 21 years old.
Yeah, totally.
Was it the records, Mike? Did the records come in?
It was an order for our merch, but I missed it. He already left. It's okay.
Oh no.
Have to wait till tomorrow.
Balmorhea headquarters.
We were saying it would have been perfect if it was the LPs, the physical LPs. You could kind of show them off.
It may have been. I went to go. There was no one out there, so they must have left and gonna try again. Quick.
Generally, they would wait at least a minute or so, but who knows? So actually, I find that like your type of music, the instrumental. I was listening to your recent tracks prior, and it like I don't know, it's beautiful, beautiful stuff where it just places me in an alternative world. Like I could easily see myself, just maybe in a landscape or just like. So could you touch upon like the process of composition, I guess? Like do you like not just the process, but like when you start writing a new track or or a new composition, like do you think about that, like this transitional kind of element that will place like a listener into a new kind of state or plane of existence, I guess, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Do you have forethought, I guess, into that, like when in composing, like how do we want to make the listener feel? And because like listening, I'm just totally transcended into a new world through this type of music. So do you have like a a mindset going into writing new stuff like that, or if that makes sense?
Well, thanks for that's so nice to hear. That's definitely one of the most beneficial things to us as artists to hear that the things we create are resonant in some way. So thank you. Um, I can speak for myself that I think whenever I create music and when Rob and I create music together, um, like whenever you feel that feeling when you're playing it and when you realize, oh, this piece works together, or this progression works, or this harmony, that it kind of does that, on the front side of the front side of the actual making of the music. So I think that we always are trying to try to find that space in our compositions for us as we're creating it. Like, so I guess that's sort of a natural progression to the other side once it's recorded and being heard by other people, that hopefully some of that translates. I mean, not everyone has their own mode of listening and their own emotions and history, so everyone's kind of approach is different, but hopefully most of what moves us hopefully will move other people too. So we're just creating music, at least for me, that moves me and is exciting to me and makes me feel more alive and makes me want to go out there and be inspired.
Yeah, I think it's there's only so much projection that you can do on what someone else might feel or experience. So I think like Mike said, it's a lot more about what moves us, in that moment when you're creating something. And yeah, there's nothing quite like that, where you find some phrase or some atmosphere that you just want to inhabit. And I don't know, I had this a lot of times when I'll be writing or playing something, and it's like you might uncover a phrase that you just want to keep playing over and over and over, and it's like you don't want to stop doing that. And to me, that's like a really beautiful place that I can find myself when I'm making music, and that can happen all along the way when you're making something, from writing to being in the studio. Maybe it's at the very end of the process once you've recorded the song and you are trying to consider what treatment you might use for a piano, or what kind of reverb you might want to have for a horn or something, a string part. And like you just don't really, so I guess it's really more about, like, for us, finding that place that we want to be transported to and being comfortable with that, and then just trusting that hopefully, if once we find that spot, that hopefully other people will be able to join us in that place.
Now, I guess maybe an alternative question would be then, what inspires both of you, I guess? Um,
Well, one thing yeah, there's many things. I guess kind of piggybacking on the last question and this, is that we've sort of developed over the years, I mean, very ambiguously, our sound, the kind of feeling that we inhibit with our typical writing styles and instrumentation. And I think that we don't want to just make the same song or album over and over again. So specifically with this record, there were some specific things and choices we made from being inspired as a listener of other music and other genres outside of what we create, but to bring in like a French horn or a bass clarinet or some choral. There's pipe organ on the new record. So these are all conscious choices and voices and kind of timbres that we wanted to, take from our own inspiration and incorporate into the world of music we were creating. So those are just like speaking of specific instruments and feeling. With this album, The Wind, those were some of the voices we were inspired by.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're inspired by a lot of things, as every individual is, but I mean, just one thing that I could say for Mike and I is that we're pretty voracious listeners of music and consumers of music. I guess consumer, I don't know if that's the right word, but we're constantly listening and constantly sharing tracks back and forth with each other and like kind of trying to sense where each other is going and where their interest lies. And that's always like a fun, it's a unique relationship that we have as a partnership creating things, because sometimes I'll send Mike a song, like for sure thinking that he'll love it or that it's great. And he'll be like, nah, like I don't like whatever. Like, and you know, like, and that's always kind of like, oh shit, like we don't have the same taste exactly. You know, we have like a big overlap and we move each other in different directions. But I mean, yeah, we're definitely inspired by the world of music and amongst a lot of other things. So,
but I think you and I both respect each other's way of listening and the way we interpret music. So like if you send me something, even though it may not resonate with me, I can still see its value and understand like that it's important and that it's interesting.
Right.
You know,
we kind of have to respect each other. Like or it wouldn't work. Yeah. And like, but yeah, it's totally like, if I know if you're sending me something, I need to understand like what it probably should understand what it is that is resonant with you for, you know, because it may be something that you're going to bring to the table, you know, in whatever way that it comes. Yeah, I think that's true.
But we've been making lots of playlists lately, just in preparation of this album release, and press stuff and doing some like mixes and playlists for different people and friends and outlets. And so it's fun to kind of collaborate and try to make the sequencing and the flow of it all work. But I will say, I mean, we're 15 years into this music project, and just as a listener and being on tour and collaborating and being around other artists and evolving in our own musical tastes, that are, I think the range of what we're listening to that's potentially seeping into our subconscious as music creators is broadening in a nice way.
Mm. Yeah. Now, how difficult has it been, or if any, since you guys kind of been, you know, working together for so long now, but like being separated and trying to collaborate on a new album, like, do you find any? I could imagine that might be difficult, but since you guys have been working with each other so long, kind of more in sync with that workflow. But has this kind of, yeah, I know Michael, you're in LA now, and you're still in Austin, Rob, but has that kind of interrupted the flow? Or maybe even the question would be, how has kind of like the pandemic kind of lifestyle and has that like kind of injected itself to kind of like interrupting your workflow, I guess, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's been incredibly disruptive. The album that we're releasing on the 9th was completed before the pandemic started. So we recorded that in October and mixed it in December of 2019. So, you know, that was kind of right before the pandemic happened. And so that was the last little relic of our life before this all happened. And yeah, you know, like everything, it's been a very disruptive year. We went for a long time without seeing each other at all, even though, I mean, Michael lived here in Austin for the majority of last year, didn't move to LA until November. We saw each other from time to time, and we were able to actually get together and work on music a fair amount. But it definitely forced us into a more solitary writing position over this past year. And so, you know, we're I don't know, we're probably a little farther into the process of writing music for the next record than I even am aware of. We've both written a lot of music this past year, actually, but it has been done for the most part individually, kind of me here in my room with my piano and Michael in his space as well. So yeah, it'll definitely affect the type of music that we make for the next record, which we're already thinking about for the trying to do some recording in the fall. of this year.
Hmm.
You know, I don't know. I think it's too early to tell exactly how
Yeah.
that rears its head. If that's, I mean, but everybody's going to be in that position, or at least most people will be in that position.
Just a couple extra degrees of intention and like prepping and scheduling, and but you know, we'll see. It'll be interesting.
I think what I've really, after kind of like a whole year of just playing music with myself, and Mike and I have gotten together a little bit, and we've been able to be in the same room, make music a little bit, a handful of times. But like, I want to play music with some other people, you know, like I really want to play a show or 2 or 10 or 20, you know, like that's something that I'm ready to get out of the room and out of my own little head writing, and just kind of like share some energy with other people. First and foremost, Michael, and then hopefully bringing some other people into our process. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, I miss shows or just live performance so much, man. It's you can't beat, the actual visceral kind of energy when you're in that a space of just, excellent music and then people around it sharing that experience physically, you know.
Yeah.
And I've tried to kind of listen to like live streams or Facebook stuff, and it doesn't resonate as well as like being there, of course. And
Right.
it's like you miss that collective energy of crowd and the performers and musicians, say on stage, or just feeding off each other, and you have that energy, that collective energy.
Right.
um and actually just listening to some of your stuff prior, it's just put me in a better mood, and I'm fascinated with
Hmm.
like how music uh can help heal too, regarding like depression, et cetera, et cetera. It's a fascinating concept I've been kind of studying lately, but that how music can really help heal somebody with a traumatic brain injury and stuff like
Hmm.
that.
Mm.
Because it's kind of personal to me and close to me, and that's I find art in any form helps heal. Um, so I think like I, in like a description, maybe even on your homepage, it says like intentionally defined set. No, like NPR said, there's like, or just like there's one piece of PR just writing that said like you guys are, you know, minimalists. It's simplified music, something like. Sorry, I can't pinpoint it right now because I just generally didn't go off of that. But I was like, no, your music is super complex, and I understanding simplicity and how to get to simplicity is a complex process.
Mm-hmm.
As my studies in design and art, it's like, you know, I hold simplicity and minimalism at the highest regard because it's so complex to get to that result of just that, cut all the fat away and this is what we want. And initially it looks like, what is that? Like for example, like John Cage's stuff, some of John Cage's stuff, it's just like,
Hmm.
and then you realize this is magnificent. It's so simplified, simplistic initially, but then it's like really, it gets down to the subconscious level, and that's where the art is. And I feel like your stuff is more experience, just, I don't know, hearing it, it just gets you to another planar, plane of feeling and emotion. And that's where true art, goes, I think. So I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry if I went on a tangent, but
No, I mean, I think I appreciate you saying that. That's nice. We definitely value uh, simplicity. I think, yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of what we do is, you know, pretty minimal. It's not really like minimalist music, I guess, but it's pretty straightforward, you know, oftentimes. And I think a lot of times we're trying to draw a pretty direct line from point A to point B, you know, like musically speaking, it's, you know, kind of straight, like a straight path. And so we don't necessarily need things to be adorned or arranged in complicated ways for them to communicate effectively. And I think that just is borne out in our own experience of as listeners and, you know, kind of people who look at and listen to artwork. And, you know, I don't know, I found that direct statements are oftentimes some of the most kind of like easiest to connect with. So I think we do value simplicity in what we do.
Oh, I get the minimalist term from just Wikipedia, so I shouldn't count. I don't know
No,
how
it's fine. Yeah, like
Wikipedia it is. Sorry, to be inaccurate if I'm not accurate. I just picked that off of Wikipedia quickly. So who knows who wrote that?
no, I mean, I love that music, that school of music, and you know, I would maybe at times aspire to be categorized in that way, but you know, at least academically, I don't know if we qualify, but in a general sense, like it is somewhat minimal. I mean, it's like usually it's just a piano and a guitar, or two guitars, or like some strings. It's not like you know, it's not always been like that. We've made some music that's pretty layered and kind of on the more complicated you know, ornate side, but I think probably our best work is the more minimal, more simple stuff.
Well, not to. I don't think I was trying to get at just you know, the compositions being minimal and or meaning the process as being kind of simplified, because just listening to it, I know the complexity. I can hear the complexities of the music and what you're trying to accomplish, like, you know. So I don't mean to say it's like simple music per se, because when I hear it and when I listen, it's way more complex, and it taps directly into my subconscious. Maybe it's my weird brain, or just like I'm spacey, but I I find it's kind of like mathematics, you know. Just like you have this composition, you have to put all these elements together into an equation that you have to simplify. You cut down into the most simplified form, right, at the end result, you know.
Right.
And that's what I guess the simplification would mean, is that you cut all the extra stuff out and you came down to the core foundational equation of sound, I guess.
Totally.
If that
Addition
totally
through subtraction.
exactly
By
so
subtraction.
I don't know, I guess then, like, this would be different for both of you, but what kind of really like, do you go out in nature and the natural environment to pull from you know, for some new inspiration, or like what is your kind of process like, just trying to create? I you know, some people have different methods, of course, and I'm kind of just curious of like, do you have like something really like a, you know, like nature that you really pull from, or anything else besides other music, of course, too?
I mean, I think definitely nature, literature, film, architecture. Kind of, I feel like there's something that can be, you know, taken and culled from every beautiful thing that is in existence in some way. But I mean, a lot of our albums and a lot of the kind of overarching concept around our stuff in the past has been the physical landscape. Some of our last albums, 2009 and 10, well, we talk about rivers, we talk about the desert, and we talk about the sky, we talk about the sea. Like these are all things that we've kind of like think about in terms of inspiring the music. And of course, our new record is called The Wind. So it's kind of a there's a natural theme that kind of has always been in our music in some way, which I feel like is the most prominent, like external voice, non-musical voice that kind of inhabits the world we've put together here.
Yeah, we definitely use, I feel like, Mike, we if when we use language to describe like kind of what we are trying to do, what we want to do, I feel like it's the language of natural world is often what we use to describe, like at the beginning of a project. Like, I mean, obviously we're trading actual songs and we're talking about music, but I think we'll say things like wide open or like, or whatever the term is, using like some naturalistic reference is something that's very common for us. I think in a way because there's no words associated with it. So I think that's an easy parallel to try to capture like a sense of space or energy, is by using like natural elements. So I'd say we're definitely inspired by that, to the extent that we are able to both be out in the natural world. We haven't been able to travel very much this year, but yeah, definitely inspired by nature.
Cool. No, sorry. I think I just went like, yeah, no, it's, one can tell, like, listening again, I think your stuff just put me in a different world just immediately. So it's like, I just actually, to kind of try to describe what it did was kind of open up my mind and put me in this wider, world, this subconscious world. It could be the metaphysical based off the physical environment, but it just kind of opened up things. So it kind of had that spatial opening in my mind and subconscious. And I don't know, it's just fascinating phenomena that music can do such things. And I could, I guess, not just listen, but I was physically, visually, I created that image too. So what I've kind of found fascinating, just by brief moments of listening to a quick track or two from your stuff, is I find it super fascinating that it can transcend just my my auditory sensory uh, to create a visual as well, and transplant me into this world of, say, a desert, or the ocean or the sky. And I don't even have to be in your, state, your, wherever you created. It's like, um, the music helps you just visualize like one's own kind of worlds that kind of resonates with um that natural feeling, I guess. Yeah.
Robert, I'm curious, when you're listening to that and you had these kind of visualizations, were they based on memory, or were you kind of just imagining a new place in your mind?
I think it's a new place. It really was just a new place, to be honest. Like, um yeah, it wasn't based off of any particular place I visited before physically. um Maybe it's just a culmination of, like, life experience, and maybe, you know places traveled, but it was totally a different, you know uh realm, or space, or visual space that I never, physically traveled to, but it was just kind of like a cool realm of my subconscious.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. That's
If that
I
makes
hope,
sense
yeah,
whatsoever.
that's incredible. I hope other people also have that effect.
I think also the nature of the music that we make is like somewhat, it kind of shifts right from song to song. It's not like, if you're listening to jazz, you kind of like, you're kind of like on stage in front of whatever the trio or the ensemble, and you're kind of like, you're more in tune with the energy, but you're not really transport. You kind of like are in the place that they're in physically. Or with like a rock band or a pop, music, like you're kind of really in tune with the energy of an individual person, like a singer
Hmm.
or, you know, like a guitar player or something. But I think for Balmorhea, it's like there's never really like quite the same focal point. Like it kind of shifts from song to song. And sometimes it's two guitars, sometimes it's just a piano, sometimes it's just a, you know, like a found sound or something, and like different voices weave in and out of what we do often. And
Hmm.
so I think that all like that can kind of transport listeners, because it doesn't have that kind of like anchored place that a lot of other kinds of music have. So I think it's easier for in what we do. And I think that's like it's something that we try to do. We want to take people away, you know, like take them to a different place.
Mm.
And I'm glad that it, you know, that is how you've experienced it as well.
No, it's cool. It's I have to kind of dive into that, like I guess more like that phenomena of like just asking the question, how does that happen? You know, but or
Hmm.
maybe I shouldn't maybe and just let it be, but
Mhm.
and just enjoy the experience. But I feel like more people should listen to the type of music you produce, because I think just be more relaxed and we can all um, kind of just be in our own like happy worlds of and experiences, and not yeah kind of live in the way we do. But hey, no, but not everybody's gonna listen, of course. But
That's true. That's true.
you know,
It would be nice if they did, if everybody
yeah.
did. Maybe.
Unless you could you kind of release like a subliminal kind of sound that you know
Hmm.
transmits all over our digital devices, and it'll tap into the subconscious, and then we'll be like but
Ultimate power. Yeah.
that gets into some kind of creepy dystopian kind of
Right.
tapping into population control
Hmm.
through subliminal kind of silent music. Um, yeah, that's where my mind goes. Sorry.
No, that's
Like,
great.
It's okay.
I mean, like I just really find your genre, if you even want to have any genre, I just find it fascinating, and I really will probably just dive deeper into you guys and your history of work, and really explore the sound and see where it goes, and see how I can kind of incorporate that into my own work and photographic or painting stuff too. Um, See where it leads in the subconscious manner. But
Cool.
Great.
That's amazing.
so I guess I don't know, not to kind of get all heady and stuff, but to wrap back to the new album, I guess, just to this this shouldn't be out for the next couple of weeks. Every 2 weeks, I kind of release these conversations, so it might be a little after your release date. I think I believe it's April 9th, right, for the win. Or,
That's
Yep,
right.
correct.
can you just talk about the a bit about the new album a little bit, just kind of so we can grasp where your sound is going towards in the current day and age?
We this record came after it'll be now 4 years after our last record came out.
Mm.
So there's been a bit of time. We've always recorded the music, with the exception of half of one album. It's always been done in Austin, Texas. But this one, we kind of like broke the mold a little bit. Like I mentioned earlier, we added some new instruments and some different players and some new voices into the compositions, but we also recorded all the material in Berlin, in Germany, at our friend's studio there, with a host of new instruments and just kind of a beautiful big space. So that kind of lent itself to like a new sort of, not new sound, but a new, kind of new air around the music. And we mixed the record and mastered it actually not too far from you, near Hudson, New York. So these are two new places, new people, new personnel, new players. Our producer friend Jonathan Lowe produced it, who it's the first time we've worked with him. So it's kind of like, and this album also is on a new label for us. Deutsche Grammophon is putting it out. So we have everything about the world around the music is kind of new people and new places and new kind of just a new energy overall with the project. And after, especially now with the pandemic in this past year and all the stuff that's gone on, like it's exciting to have this kind of new chapter, a new leaf kind of being unfurled for the continuation of our music to move forward.
Yeah, and I would just say, for people who aren't familiar with Balmorhea, this album for us is in some ways a return to kind of the roots of how we were writing music when we first started, kind of like as young men. And so this one we set out at the beginning to write our songs for the most part together in a room. So with me playing piano and Mike playing guitar, or us both playing guitar. So we really wanted to kind of simplify our compositional process and have the core of most of these songs be able to kind of like speak for themselves live in a room with just the two of us. That said, it's, there's a lot of additional arrangements on the record. But, a lot of the songs are quite simple in that they just are a piece of piano music or guitar music with additional voices, some, like Mike mentioned before, a few new timbres and voices for us, like such as French horn, bass clarinet appears a couple of times on the album. And for the most part, it's a pretty acoustic. There's there's a few little synthesizer parts that come in, but for the most part, it's almost strictly acoustic instruments on this. So yeah, it's a return to our roots a little bit, but also I think a step forward for us compositionally and sonically. The studio that we recorded in was just one of the most incredible studios probably in the world. So I think the songs really benefited from that studio as well. So I'm excited for people to, I think it's a good place. Like if you've never heard of Balmorhea before, this album that's about to come out is a great place to start. Cool. Or if you've listened to us for 15 years, I think people will still see this as part of, even though there's a lot of new things for us, they'll still see it very much as a part of the world that we have been creating over this past 15 years.
Now, have you, I know some people have kind of booked dates tentatively, obviously things are still in flux and such, but have you been able to book anything that even outside kind of performance, even a smaller kind of show or anything, or what's your kind of strategy? Just sit and wait, or like, what's that like? I know things have been kind of still super in flux regarding in-person entertainment and such. So have you?
We're kind of starting our plans. We started to think about what we're going to do, and we've been talking with our booking agents about when the right time is. So we're hoping to be able to put some shows on the calendar, maybe in the later summer or the early part of the fall, and then hopefully do some touring proper in the spring of 2022. Yeah. That could happen sooner, I don't know, or later depending, but we don't have anything on the calendar, unfortunately, but I think like a lot of artists, we're definitely starting to think a lot more seriously about when that can happen.
Well, I think, oh man, I just lost my train of, sorry. It's like,
happens to everybody.
Well, I think, I think like realistically, everybody should kind of really project 2022 because we see incidents of, things going up now in Europe still, and,
mutations and whatnot.
Yeah, who knows? But
yeah.
Is there, I guess, any level of achievement you haven't yet kind of achieved? Any dream project? Any venturing into like film or film scores or anything like that, or anything you guys over the last 15, 20 years haven't yet completed or wish to complete?
Hmm. Yeah, we've done a fair amount of composition for film, but we haven't done that much of it, and we haven't really collaborated musically with too many artists or filmmakers or choreographers. So I guess I would love, speaking for both of us, and I think it's safe to say Rob feels the same way, that we would love to kind of just like continue to grow and, you know, expand the artists and the people that are making beautiful things in the world, and, you know, on a higher level, and just to keep pushing that, and hopefully, you know, our music can live alongside some of those other pieces of art in a way that is, you know, everything kind of raises together.
I think I mean, there's still a whole life's worth of things to accomplish in music, to make in all different kinds of ways. And like, you know, I think we both feel very fortunate and privileged to be able to do what we do, make music for a living, and to have been able to do it for 15 years. But yeah, I mean, it's really like, I don't know. I think even though we've been doing it for a long time, it always feels, and as it should, it always feels like, okay, what's that next thing? What is the next horizon that we want to do? What's the next sound we want to explore? There's always something. And I think that's, of course, how it should be. Like, you should never, as an artist, feel like you have accomplished, or I don't think you would ever really quite feel like you've accomplished what you set out to accomplish. It's always about pushing things forward, exploring new territory. And so we feel lucky in that we're in the position that we are, but like, yeah, we still have a lot of life ahead of us and a lot of things to do and to continue to explore.
So it's just a constant evolution, I guess, right? And that's what I'm learning too. Just I'm kind of later in life, kind of discover I'm an artist. well, well, or at least take it seriously. But that's what I'm learning too. It's like I just got to keep on doing it. And
Right.
I have to ask myself, how do I evolve? How do I push this idea? How do I expand this idea I have in my head and get it out into the physical realm and the reality, whatever medium. And I like to experiment too with, like, you know, photographic practices, painting, and like I'd love to kind of like have an immersive physical experience with sound, some crazy sound that would tap into the subconscious and make people really physically feel something while they view like some interesting visuals and stuff too. So I'm a proponent of just mixing all sensories into experiential experiences, I guess. But I'm still learning myself and evolving and understand. It's just like you got to keep on pushing, you know, and kind of just
it doesn't get any easier, I don't think, ever. I mean, and I don't think it should. It should always be like a struggle and a battle. Not to say that I mean, I think making art can also be very effortless, and it can be very you know, free and without a lot of toil and trouble. But it's like those two worlds combined. But I think, yeah, like you're saying, it's the work is never done, because it's really, that's kind of where it is to begin with, is like in the exploration of ideas and the expression of ideas and the drawing in of new colors and techniques and yeah. So let's do your thing where you let's get bring those disciplines together, cross-disciplinary work. Like that's very exciting.
I guess to wrap up, just more of like a closing question. Any advice for younger composers out there? Like, I know it's kind of broad kind of question, but I always find it valuable. You know, maybe somebody, you know, younger composer and artist, and may take some advice away from this conversation. Since you guys been doing it and successfully for so long, any tidbit of advice?
I guess for me, I like gear and I like instruments, the physical hardware of music making. And I'm always like, oh, if I just had this one thing different, or if I had this type of guitar, it would be easier to write music, or I could write better music if it was sounded a little bit better. But I think that in reality, it's all about your kind of drive and your own intuition in your writing. Like, yes, it could physically sound 10% better if you had this different type of pickup in your electric guitar, or these type of strings or whatever. But I mean, it really boils down to making the most of what you do have access to. So, I mean, I think that what I'm trying to say is, like, use the things that are around you and your resources that you do have. And like, it's not, if you get to that point where you can get the next level up, that's great. But I mean, exhaust everything you can creatively from what you have before you try to do that. I just have wasted some time in my own life where I could have been doing something where I was just waiting for another piece to come to. In my mind, I thought it would be easier or better, but it's sometimes even harder.
Yeah. I don't know. It's not hard to. I think advice. I don't know. The only advice that kind of comes to my mind would just be that, like, you really have to learn how to trust yourself first. To make something, and to make something of value, and then you also really need to trust the people that you're engaged with in making things. And like, I think I'm very lucky. Mike and I are both lucky to really trust each other, and that it's very important as a young person who is making artwork that you need to have relationships of trust with the people that you work with, because I think that's kind of like the foundation. Like, first with yourself, and then with the people that you work with, both artistically and then even in a professional sense. Like, because if you lose a trust factor, that can just, I think, be very corrosive to not only the creative and artistic process, but to like relationships between people. And I think, Mike and I have been very protective about our relationship with each other. A lot of artists, can't continue for a very long time working together, because I think relationships can fall apart for good reasons and for bad reasons. So I would just try to foster like trust with yourself and trust with the people that you work with.
Try to find someone like Rob where you trust him more than yourself. That's the key.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for your time. I'm definitely looking forward to the new album out April 9th, entitled The Wind. And I suggest anybody viewing check these guys out, because they'll transcend your physical realm.
So thank you very much, Robert. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Enjoy your afternoon, Mike. And actually, here in Texas, I haven't. Are you 2 hours behind in Austin, or 1 hour, or?
Well, I think it's 3:00 here now, so we're in the solid afternoon territory.
Cool. So both of you enjoy your afternoons, and thank you once again for your time.
Yeah. Cheers, Robert. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.